Do the Baltimore Ravens have enough depth heading into 2022 training camp? We talk about that and more next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. Of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online, as we covered this season with more props and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. And we're back. No longer Locked On Ravens After Dark. The background behind me is real. For those who maybe didn't tune in last week or are new to the channel, there was a huge storm ripped through the Baltimore, the Maryland area, caused a power outage for a lot of people, and I was involved in that. I had power out for 5 days and just got it back yesterday afternoon. So it was getting close to being another Locked On Ravens After Dark with the virtual background and everything, but we are here today. We're covering Ravens football from the real background. And we have a lot to talk about today. Training camp's quickly approaching. We're getting close. We're getting really, really close. And I still want to continue talking about the depth that this team has and do a kind of a conversation about if the Ravens have enough depth heading into training camp. Now, I know that we've done a lot with their depth, how much I like the depth. We've talked about roster construction. We've talked about position by position breakdowns, which we'll continue actually round out in this final segment here today. But in the first segment, I want to talk about if the Ravens have enough depth on offense. So we'll go position by position there. In the second segment, we'll talk about the defense. We'll talk about position by position there. Then in the final segment, we will round out our positional previews for 2022. It's going to be the secondary, so cornerbacks and safeties, as well as the specialists. So specialists are a big part of things. I don't want to leave them out. So we're going to talk about those in the final segment. So let's talk about the Ravens depth here today. Before we do that, though, if you hear this on YouTube in video form, thank you so much. I know you can see my face and my background, the real one now, not virtual and everything. So if you're subscribed to this channel, I want to thank you so much. Your support is greatly appreciated. We're aiming for 3,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed yet, I'll tell you why you should subscribe. We put out daily Ravens content 5 days per week. So you want Ravens news, analysis, updates, historical perspectives, or anything, we have you covered Monday through Friday here on this channel. So be sure to subscribe. And I thank you for your future subscription, of course, and also in audio form. Thank you so much for listening, both the same show in audio and video, so you don't have to worry about missing out on any content. If you're on your way to work, from work, wherever, thank you so much for listening and tuning in, whether it is Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, available anywhere you get your favorite podcast. And also be sure to follow along and be sure to turn notifications on. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at KOstreicher34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So let's dive into this content and let's start off with the offense. We're going to talk about depth, and I've gone on record. I've said that I like the Ravens depth a lot. Like, I think it's really, really, really good. I think they've addressed a lot of key positions, and they have not just addressed it with one player here or there. They've really attacked the positions of need that they needed to. Not every single one, right? I don't think it was a perfect offseason, but I think it was a very good one. So starting off with the quarterback position, obviously you got Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley there. Those are your 1-2. Not really a question of that at this point. 3 and 4, you have Brett Hundley and Anthony Brown as your options. Hundley coming in, an experienced guy, 8-year veteran out of UCLA. Anthony Brown coming in as an undrafted guy out of Oregon. I think the Ravens are fine here. I think that what they will ultimately end up doing, my hunch is that they'll probably keep 2 quarterbacks, and those will be Jackson and Huntley. So then you're looking at the third practice squad quarterback, right? The third stringer is going to be on the practice squad. I think if Hundley shows that he deserves to be that guy, then hey, they're completely fine there. And then maybe if Anthony Brown doesn't make it, they have an option. They bring back Kenji Bahar for a couple of weeks if they need to. But I think they're okay at quarterback. Tyler Huntley is one of the higher end backups in this league, and he also fits what the Ravens do on offense. So I think that he is perfect as a backup for Lamar Jackson. I know he wouldn't be everybody's cup of tea in the NFL, but for the Ravens, I think he is a very valuable piece. And so if Lamar Jackson were to miss some time, I think with hopefully an improved performance by Tyler Huntley, he showed a ton of flashes. He also had some things he had to improve upon. So I think the Ravens are okay at quarterback. Definitely. I think they have enough But obviously, if Jackson goes down, that's a huge blow to the team anyway. Like the drop off between Jackson and Huntley is rather significant. No shade to Tyler Huntley. That's not meant to be an insult. It just means that Jackson is that good of a player. So if Jackson goes down, you're already looking at a pretty big drop off anyway. But I think Huntley is a player that can at least give the Ravens a chance, as he showed last year. He gives them a chance to go out there, compete, and win football games. So they're good at quarterback. Running back, the Ravens, that was a position. A lot of people said, how are they going to address this position in the offseason? They go and they add Tyler Beatty in the draft. They add Mike Davis in free agency. They're obviously getting back guys like J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. They have Nate McCrary on the team as well. Ricky Person, who's an undrafted guy. I really like what Baltimore did here, because worst case scenario, which for a lot of people would probably be assuming both guys come back, it would be them not coming back at the start of the year or in 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever it may be. So if in worst case, let's say J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards have to go on the PUP list, both of them, and they miss 2 months of the season. Let's say that. I know PUP list is 6 weeks, but we'll say they miss 2 months. The Ravens, they have Tyler Beatty, who coming out of Missouri was just, he was a do-it-all running back. He's an experienced guy, played for a lot of years in college and picked up a lot of things. Good as a runner, very hard-nosed guy, breaks off of contact easily, good as a receiver, good hands. I mean, shifty guy as well. He's a complete package. And I feel like he is a running back who is ready to contribute now for this team. Whether Dobbins and Edwards are good to go week one or whether they need some time, I think Beatty could be that. So if you put him in tandem with a Mike Davis, who also a very good receiver, hard-nosed runner, those two, while they're not Dobbins and Edwards, there would be a drop-off compared to what Dobbins and Edwards could bring. They're in a much better situation depth-wise now than they were last year at the time when they had to bring in Le'Veon Bell and Devonta Freeman and Latavius Murray. And plus, if you have to keep on a guy like Justice Hill or Nate McCrary or Ricky Person, I think they're okay there, but you can also stash them. Like if McCrary goes on the practice squad again, if you put Person on there, I don't think Justice Hill, if he gets cut, would get claimed by another team. So I don't think it's realistic he's on the practice squad. Maybe it is. Maybe he gets on there, but I think the Ravens can keep 2 running backs in the practice squad while still having, I assume they're keeping 4. So having 4 solid guys to have that position be really, really solid, even if Dobbins and Edwards have to miss a bit of time. Fullback, I mean, we can even talk about fullback. I think the fullback depth is solid too, especially for a team. Again, fullback is not the bread and butter position of every team. Not every team uses a fullback. The position has gone kind of extinct over the past couple of seasons. I think the Ravens are set. They have Patrick Ricard and now Ben Mason back in the fold. I think that obviously only one of those guys is going to make it, and that is Patrick Ricard. But now you have Mason hopefully on the practice squad this year, which will provide insurance for that. So even fullback-wise, they have some depth. Wide receiver is a bit interesting. I still prefer they add a veteran. I think they're okay depth-wise. Like, I think from a depth perspective, it's a little bit risky to only have these young players. Like, the Ravens are taking a chance here. They're taking a chance that these young guys can, 1, perform, 2, stay healthy, and 3, make a positive impact, almost like a veteran might have done. Now, obviously, all veterans don't make an impact, or at least a positive one. We have seen that with Michael Crabtree and Jeremy Maclin recently, Sammy Watkins. So that's an example of some veterans that don't work out. So it's not like every veteran sign is going to work out. But I think they're okay. They have those top 4. I believe at least one of the undrafted guys, or Benjamin Victor or Jalen Moore, will be able to step out and establish themselves as the number 5 guy. Right now, I'm assuming they're keeping 5. So I think for now, they're okay. They could definitely add someone else. Like, I definitely think they could do so. Their depth is a little bit on the thin side, but I think they're okay. Tight end wise, I think they're very, very set. They have Mark Andrews obviously being the top guy, Nick Boyle, they have Charlie Kolar, Isaiah Likely, then the other guys, Josh Oliver and Tony Poljan. I mean, you have depth. I mean, I think the Ravens are keeping 4 guys: Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, Charlie Kolar, Isaiah Likely. I think Josh Oliver is on the outside looking in right now. But if you can somehow sneak him on the practice squad, hey, I think that'd be awesome. I think that's a way to definitely maximize talent. I think Oliver is still a talented player, just did not have a great year last year for the Ravens, and just does not have a spot on this team at the moment, in my opinion. So depth-wise, with Andrews and Boyle being the vets and Kohler and Likely being the rookies, they have options there for days. And then looking on the offensive line, I mean, we can start off with the tackle position. Daniel Falele, Jawan James. They have Jared Jones-Smith, Morgan Moses, Ronnie Stanley. Again, a position that a lot of people are curious. How are the Ravens going to address the position? Ronnie Stanley goes down a week into the year and after not really feeling well on his ankle after the second surgery. The Ravens have to shuffle their offensive line a lot. This is a year where even if Stanley has to miss some time, he can do the same situation with Dobbins and Edwards. If Stanley has to miss the first 6 weeks, they are better prepared because also Patrick McCary can slide out and play some tackle. We saw him do that last year. More and the veterans, Moses and Juwan James, those are all players that can contribute. They have the rookie in Falele. So I think they're good at tackle. I think they have a good depth lineup at the tackle position. Then you look at the guards. I think right guard, obviously Kevin Zeitler's the guy there, but you have depth. You have Tyree Phillips. You have Khalil McKenzie, who can double as a defensive tackle as well. We talked about McCary. There's Ben Powers, Ben Cleveland. There are going to be a lot of guys competing for left guard. So that is the Powers, Cleveland, Phillips, McCary kind of tandem. Zeitler has the right guard position. That's his. But I think that otherwise, if Zeitler has to miss a couple games, you can throw Tyree Phillips in there if you need to. If he's not starting at left guard, you can move another guy in there as well. The Ravens do have versatility in that regard. I think they're good there. I think they have a solid guard lineup, and especially whoever wins the left guard job will be starting, but they will have depth behind that person in the event of an injury to either Zeitler or whoever wins that job. And then center, they definitely have depth. Tyler Linderbaum comes in. You have Patrick McCary, who, assuming the Ravens didn't draft Linderbaum, was probably going to win that job. And then Tristan Colon. So they have 3 really solid centers. I'm not sure all 3 make the team, but they are set at the center position, I think. So all in all, the Ravens offense, I think that they do have enough depth heading into training camp. I mean, you could definitely see them potentially add another wide receiver. I don't know if they're going to go that route. Maybe they just wait it out, see what they have, and then add one right before the season starts or mid-season in a trade or free agency. But yeah, I think they are rather set offensively with depth. And when we get back, we're going to be diving into the defense and talking about if they are set defensively with their depth. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, though, I do want to tell you a bit about Bet Online. And betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, which has the draft going on. The Orioles picking number 1. They took Jackson Holiday. So you have Lamar Jackson Holiday, Lamar Jackson Holiday. See what I did there. But BetOnline is your continued source for our sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for our sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. So head over to the website today. Use the mode of our to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you again. Thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen today. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, like this video. Be sure to follow us in audio form, turn notifications on. And also, if you're wondering which NFL stars move the betting lines the most, starting today, Locked On gives you the 50 most valuable players in the NFL from the odds makers at Bet Online. Available again today on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. Let's talk about the Ravens' depth defensively. And I have talked a lot about their defensive line room, so we'll start with their defensive line room and talk a bit about what they have. So obviously starting off, you got Calais Campbell, very nice veteran presence. You have Aaron Crawford, Brent Urban, Travis Jones, Justin Madubuike, Rashad Nichols, Michael Pierce, Broderick Washington. I mean, they have a lot of depth at defensive tackle, defensive line, where I think they can use it all to their advantage. They have a nice, solid mix of veterans and young guys. I think you have a nice, solid mix of run stuffers and pass rushers, each of which can provide a little bit of both. It's not just this guy is a pure run stuffer with no pass rush ability. I know a lot of people saw that with Brandon Williams. Michael Pierce, much more of a run stuffer, but can give you a bit on the interior as a pass rusher. I think the Ravens, they don't need to add anything here. They'll have to probably get rid of a couple guys like Aaron Crawford, who's been around the team for a bit now. So I think they're definitely set there. At the outside linebacker position, I know we've talked about this group a lot. Oh, not to mention Isaiah Mack is also in that group, and he was someone who flashed a little bit, had a couple sacks on Joe Burrow. So side note there. But outside linebacker, you have Vince Beagle, Tyus Bowser, Dalen Hayes, Justin Houston, Steven Means, Jeremiah Moon, David Ajabo, Adafe Owe, Chuck Wiley, a couple guys there that I think can really make an impact. Now, as I did talk about last week, especially with the Houston signing, it depends on what the health of Bowser and Ajabo is. Because if you look at the top 5 guys and you say, oh, well, they have Bowser and Ajabo and Owe and Hayes and Houston, that's a really good top 5. But assuming Bowser and Ajabo will have to miss some time, that's what I'm personally assuming right now. It's looking more like Owe, Hayes, Houston, and then maybe like a Means and then a Jeremiah Moon, like one veteran, one undrafted guy. not bad, definitely better with Houston in there, but they could definitely stand to add a Jason Pierre-Paul. I think it's a little, their outside linebacker depth is a little worrisome, especially if one of those three go down, and Owe, Hayes, or Houston. Then you're definitely looking at a bit of either inexperience or a veteran that maybe his best days are behind him. I don't know. So like a Jason Pierre-Paul, I think would make a lot of sense, but maybe they just wait it out and see. I don't really know. Outside linebacker is one of the positions where I'm a little bit wary of the depth, but they might just wait it out and see what they have, especially with some of these younger guys. Inside linebacker is a position I've talked about before. Obviously, you have guys like Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison there, veterans like Josh Bynes, a couple undrafted guys as well. Also, Kristen Welch, who's been with the team for a while. I think the depth there is all right, but I just don't think they need as much of it because, as I've talked about before, the 3 safety looks, the 6 DB looks, the multiple secondary packages that they're going to have, I think eliminates, well, not eliminates, but it definitely lessens the need, I'd say, to have them keep 5, 6 outside or inside linebackers. Excuse me. I think it will be more along the lines of 4 guys that they keep. And maybe that is Kristen Welch. Maybe it is an undrafted guy. I think the 3 locks are Patrick Queen, Malik Harrison, and Josh Bynes. But you can use Chuck Clark down in the dime linebacker spot. You can move Kyle Hamilton down. You can even move Marcus Williams down if you want to. You can put Marlon Humphrey on the inside, and you can move guys all around. So I think that for what the Ravens have from a safety perspective, you can even talk about Tony Jefferson. I mean, we'll talk about these guys in a second. But I think for Baltimore, it's not like they have the best inside linebacker group in the NFL. Patrick Queen has shown flashes. Malik Harrison has shown flashes. Josh Bynes, a steady veteran. I think that might be all they need right now. And then maybe if an injury happens, there are other guys on the free agent market that could definitely help them out. But yeah, I think they're okay inside linebacker wise. I think if they want to use those inside linebackers more than I'm anticipating they use them, maybe then I'd say, all right, maybe they should add somebody if they're going to keep 5 guys. But if they keep 4, I think they're good. I think they're all right. Cornerback and safety, secondary, they're good. We'll talk about these guys now and in the final segment. This will be more of an actual just who they have, and the final segment will be more of what they bring. But the cornerback position, and again, it does depend where you classify a couple guys. But at cornerback right now, they have Jalen Armour-Davis, they have Kyle Fuller, Marlon Humphrey, Robert Jackson, Iman Marshall, Marcus Peters, Kevon Seymour, David Vereen, and Demarion Williams, and Denzel Williams. And you could put Brandon Stevens in there, and you can put Darius Washington in there. They have guys. They have a lot of guys there. Top 3 being Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, and Kyle Fuller. But let's go back to the J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Ronnie Stanley situations. If Marcus Peters has to miss some time, let's say 6 weeks on the PUP list is kind of like the, oh no, that's not great. If that has to happen, I think Baltimore still is fine. It's a little bit iffy because I know it's young guys you're relying on, Kyle Fuller being the number 2 guy who struggled in Denver last year. But Brandon Stevens, I think that he has potential. You don't want to necessarily rely on him as a number 1 guy right now, but I think as a number 3, that'd be fine. Ravens are going to probably define his role a bit more as training camp goes on. But I think they're okay. It will be more of a stretch if Marcus Peters can't play week 1 or up until week 6 or week 7 or week 8 or whatever it may be. But I think they're okay. The depth at cornerback is okay. I think people see a lot of names and like, oh yeah, they're good. I think they're good, but I wouldn't say they are amazing there. They have young potential players who can come and make an impact. But in terms of if you want that veteran reliability, you're going to have to rely, if Peters can't play, on Humphrey and on Fuller, and then you're relying on second-year guys, first-year guys, and maybe a guy like Iman Marshall who hasn't played barely any during his time in the league. So they could maybe add a corner if Peters can't play, but I think they are still good cornerback depth-wise. Safety depth-wise, I mean, this team is great. They are A-okay safety-wise. They have been for a while now. Adding Marcus Williams and a guy like Kyle Hamilton to Chuck Clark. They bring back Tony Jefferson, Geno Stone. Again, if you want to put Brandon Stevens and Darius Washington in there, you can. They have a lot of talented playmakers there. I don't think they're gonna have any shortage of guys. Even if one of those guys, the big 3 of Williams, Hamilton, and Clark, if one of those guys has to miss significant time, they have the other 2, and that's okay. And then that does probably alter a defense a little bit, but you still have those guys. So I think that they are good safety-wise, and then specialist-wise, I mean, they have Justin Tucker. They're good. Jordan Stout, they're good. Nick Moore, they're good. If a guy goes down, the Ravens have been a kicking factory for a while. Hopefully, Jordan Stout will be able to do some good things during his rookie season. And then Nick Moore is a player that in his second year full snapping for the Ravens will hopefully be able to do some things, definitely. So I think the Ravens have done a very good job depth-wise. I know I've said that before. There are a couple of positions they could definitely stand to add at. I've talked about that too. Wide receiver, outside linebacker, potentially inside linebacker, potentially cornerback. But I think they're okay. And as I talked about last week, I think the depth now compared to this time last year is just it's night and day in my opinion. I think they've done such a great job in making sure the positions that they knew were needs, not all of them, but most of them, are filled up depth-wise, and they are going to be much better equipped to respond to injury this year. That doesn't mean it's all going to go great and they're going to be sunshine and rainbows everywhere, but I think that they give themselves a better chance of having that with the guys that they now have on their roster. But we still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens coming up. We're going to be continuing our conversation about the cornerbacks, the safeties, and the specialists, rounding out our positional previews for 2022. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, though, I do want to tell you a bit about Dave. And sometimes you want to look at hindsight and it's 2020 and you can't change the past. What if you could get a little help from your future self? Maybe you'd ask to borrow a little cash, but now you can with Dave. Dave is the banking app that can help you get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest or no credit card check needed, and millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Again, download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. The future you will thank you. We're back. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher, your host, still here with you. Again, thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, like the video, follow us in audio form, turn notifications on, the whole 9 yards. And also be sure to make your second listen of the day Locked On NFL. I hosted the Monday show over there again. If you want to hear me talk about the NFL from a larger scope, the national stage on our network, be sure to check that out. We talk about N'Keal Harry. We talk about Orlando Brown Jr. So that's an interesting tidbit of that if you want to tune into that conversation with our Chiefs host on our network, Ryan Tracy. So tune into that as well. Well, let's now talk about the corners, the safeties, and the specialists as we round out our 2022 positional previews on this show. So let's start with corners. Marlon Humphrey is the top guy here. Coming off a year where he definitely struggled, can't really deny that fact. I know the Jamar Chase game back in week 7 definitely was a game that a lot of people want to forget. It's a game that people look at and they say, ooh, let's just throw that one away and let's never talk about it again, which definitely fair, right? Not a game that a lot of people want to remember. But Humphrey just struggled a little bit in a lot of different aspects, communication-wise, tackling-wise. There were some issues that I'd say were definitely more amplified with him because, we all look at Marlon Humphrey as a top 5 corner, better than top 5 corner. So for him to have the year that he had, it was still a good year. It just wasn't a Marlon Humphrey year. Definitely some lapses that we weren't used to seeing from him. I think this year is going to be a big bounce back year for him, and especially with his versatility to play both on the outside and on the inside. You look at Marcus Peters, a player that this Ravens defense sorely missed. They missed him a lot. I think for what he brings to the table, you just miss the turnovers. You miss the high football IQ. Marcus Peters is a very smart player, very smart person. He's somebody who just provides a lot of energy on the field as well. He'll be trash talking. It's really fun to watch Marcus Peters play, and I'm looking forward to seeing him playing again in 2022. Other than that, we did talk a bit about the depth in the second segment. They have Kyle Fuller, who definitely did struggle in Denver. They can use him as a guy who can play outside and inside, although I wouldn't expect him necessarily to get all the reps outside or inside. He'll be definitely more of a depth piece that can play a high level of snaps if needed, but he definitely has to have a bounce back season. He's a Baltimore native, so it's a cool story. But other than that, you're looking at guys like Jalen Armour-Davis and Pepe Williams and Iman Marshall, who, those are younger guys. Marshall might not even make this team. Right now, he's on my outside looking in. But if you want to classify Brandon Stevens as a cornerback, that's definitely something that you can do. I think he will be playing a lot of corner in 2022. Same thing with our Darius Washington, definitely a slot option. for the Ravens. Seems like they view him more as a slot guy as opposed to maybe a free safety, which is what he came out of college as. But he has that versatility. Both guys, Washington and Stevens, have versatility, so they can utilize those players. But I think it will be key for Marlon Humphrey to have a bounce back season, Marcus Peters to be able to come back and play at full strength and return to form, Kyle Fuller having that bounce back year too. Then you can rely on the younger guys for depth and getting them experience. They can play, definitely. Like, some guys will be able to step in and play some snaps that they need. And we have seen with this position, especially for the Ravens, they start the year with 50 million healthy corners and everything's looking great. And then by the end of the year, they have 2 guys and you're thinking, oh man, like, this is not good. So I think for the Ravens, they definitely have some depth at corner, but there would be a couple issues, I'd say. If 1 or 2 of the veterans go down and miss significant time, then they kind of have to shuffle again, rely on some young guys, and just see how it pans out. But I still like their group. I still like the room that they have, definitely. Safety-wise, again, talked about that a bit in the second segment too. The trio of Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, and Chuck Clark is one that, if it stays intact, again, haven't really heard much on the Chuck Clark trade rumbling front. I still think they should keep him. But if they're able to stay intact, I think that group is one of the best, if not the best, safety rooms in the NFL. Marcus Williams coming over, a ball hawk of a safety, someone who just is a do-it-all player, but he can play in the deep half of the field, which I think playing single high is something the Ravens, they had guys who could do it, but I don't think they could really trust somebody back there. Like, they try to do it a bit, but I think Marcus Williams gives them that true center fielder they have not had since Earl Thomas. And Earl Thomas played a big role in the 2019 defense. And for whatever happened off the field, he was still very, very good on it. So the Williams signing was a great one. Bringing in Kyle Hamilton, versatile, instinctive, physical player, great at stopping the run, can also be a guy in coverage who can just cause nightmares for opposing quarterbacks. And you add that to Chuck Clark, who's the glue guy of this defense, someone who wears the green dot, someone who is just an all-around solid player, not the best safety in the league, but is someone who is a big, big part of the Ravens defense. I love what they can do with him, putting him down at the dime linebacker spot, maybe playing him next to Patrick Queen or Josh Bynes or something, and then using maybe 5 DBs on the field. They can do a lot of things with Chuck Clark. Tony Jefferson came in last year struggling to find a role for himself after suffering that injury when he played for the Ravens the first time he signed a contract. It was a long road for Tony Jefferson, definitely. But he came in, played incredible football, had that tackle on the, what was it, a 2-point conversion by the Rams where he ran through a guy and tackled Odell Beckham. I mean, he played lights out. And you could see the impact. He was motivated, and now that he has a chance to be with this team for the full offseason, get back in the training camp with the guys, I think he's going to have a great year. Geno Stone, somebody who a lot of people are very high on, think he can make an impact. Definitely a special teamer, but also getting some other snaps, had some interceptions last season. So, I mean, he's a guy, again, an impact player. So the Ravens have depth at safety in combining their cornerback depth and their safety depth. I just think both positions work very well off of each other. You know, you're looking at lining guys up all over the field. We know Don Martindale loved doing it, right? Moving guys all over. I think Mike McDonald will still do that. I don't think just because Don Martindale's gone doesn't mean that Mike McDonald won't. But there are a lot of options for Mike McDonald. And to come into a situation now, first-year defensive coordinator in Baltimore, to have the versatility that you have now if you're Mike McDonald, and you can say, well, I can put Marlon Humphrey here, and then I can put him there, and then I can put him there, and then you can do the same thing with Chuck Clark and Kyle Hamilton and Kyle Fuller and just all these different players. It will be such a valuable thing for him to have. I'm very excited for what he can do with these players that he's going to have, because he's a very smart defensive mind, a very young coach that I think has a lot of innovative ways to make sure this secondary can bounce back. It was one of the worst secondaries in the league last year, but now on paper, I have said, and I will stand by it, it is the best. So when you're looking at how it all can translate to the field, McDonald will play a huge role in that. They have the talent, but I think they'll have to put it together on the field, but I think they have a pretty good shot at doing that. Then finally, looking at the specialists, we all know who Justin Tucker is. We all know the year he's going to have, barring something completely unforeseen. He's going to win the Ravens some games. He's going to be able to get this team in position to win others. I mean, he's so important to what they do. And then looking at a guy like Jordan Stout, obviously the retirement of Sam Cook, we will probably see some rookie, I don't want to call them jitters, but maybe some rookie mistakes from Jordan Stout. Maybe just not as we all got very, I think, used to Sam Cook. A lot of people who cover this team, watch this team, they knew what they were getting with Sam Cook. With Jordan Stout, it's a little bit more of a mystery man, right? Very productive player in college, very good player in college. But what can he do for this team? Can he step into that Sam Cook role and be Sam Cook right away? I don't think that's possible. Sam Cook left such a legacy. He was so solid for so many years. I think Jordan Stout has the potential to be a solid punter and leave his legacy. I'm very high on Jordan Stout. I think he'll be very, very, very good. But to expect prime Sam Cook out of the gate, I think, unfortunately, it might just not be that. You got to kind of expect a few things to maybe not go right as Jordan Stout learns his way around the NFL game. And that's okay, right? Rookies are allowed to make mistakes. It's fine. But again, I think for a competing team, you got to limit those as much as you can if you're Jordan Stout. But I like Jordan Stout a lot. And then Nick Moore, coming off of a good year as the first-year long snapper in Baltimore after Morgan Cox goes to Tennessee. Second year for Moore, I think will be solid. So again, 3 positions, corner, safety, specialist. We're rounding out our positional rankings here, our previews for these positions. I think the Ravens have done a great job of building their roster up, and I'm excited to see them on the field come week 1, even before that preseason training camp. We're getting close. We're getting really, really close. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be diving into more Ravens content, so be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here tomorrow.